Welcome to my Game Week 11 team selection video. In this video, I'm going to be revealing my transfer plans going into this weekend and also covering off all of the injury news that we had from today's press conferences and of course the few that we had on Thursday, as there are some quite big updates regarding the likes of Botman, Gabriel Jesus, to name a few. So you're going to make sure you stick around for this video, and of course make sure you do drop a like on this stream and subscribe if you haven't already. Slightly different format on this video as it is a live stream. If you are tuning into the live stream, please do drop any questions that you have in the chat and I'll be answering them at the end of this video. But as I mentioned, I want to discuss exactly what my Game Week 11 team is looking at and who is going to be my captain between both Mo Salah and Erling Haaland, who both have fantastic fixtures. But to kick off this video, I want to go through everything that you may have missed in today's press conferences, kicking off with Arsenal. So here is the quote that has been taken from the press conference straight from the mouth of Arteta, and shout out to Fantasy Football Scout. I have screenshotted some of your tweets, but again, I definitely recommend you guys checking them out because they are one of the best around when you're trying to follow all of the press conference information. I really do recommend following them. So this is the information that we've had from Arteta in today's press conference. He has stated that Odegaard should be fit enough to return after not starting Arsenal's last two matches. So good news for those that maybe kept the faith in Odegaard, but realistically away against Newcastle, not a fixture that I'd necessarily be looking to buy Odegaard in, it is worth noting. Emil Smith-Rowe out for weeks, again, wasn't an FPL consideration for our teams and nobody realistically was looking to buy him. But the big one is that Arteta couldn't guarantee whether Gabriel Jesus was going to return before the international break. Now, we need to remember Game Week 11 is away against Newcastle. Game Week 12 is at home against Burnley. And then we have the international break shortly after those game weeks. So I think Enquiries is quite good for the next few weeks. And I do want to quickly touch on Enquiries in this video before we move on to the other teams at this press conference. But I think right now, if you own Enquiries, it's looking really good for the next few weeks. And again, let me know in the comment section if you are one of those Enquiries owners that owned him for that hat-trick at home against Sheffield United, because what a ridiculous outcome that was. And congratulations to everybody that had them. Outside of that, no real updates. The big one, obviously, is Gabriel in defence. I own him. We haven't had any confirmation. Realistically, you're probably in a position where you have three other defenders that are better than him this game week. I am one of those managers. My recommendation would probably be just to hold Gabriel this game week and then reassess in game week 12. Hopefully we get a bit more information, because if Gabriel doesn't start away against Newcastle, then he is a big worry, because Arsenal in a title run-in, Newcastle away, one of the toughest fixtures that they could possibly have. Gabriel has to start that game if Arteta actually deems him as an option in his starting 11. Now, moving on to this Enquiries situation, because I know he is currently the most bought player going into Game Week 11, and I completely get it. Any player that scores a hat-trick, we're naturally going to be very, very tempted to invest in that player. And obviously, off the back of that home game against Sheffield United, at 5.5 million, maybe 5.6 million is worth noting. I do apologise. We're all tempted to bring in Enquiries. And I want to show you the stats on him first and foremost. This is based on per 90 minutes that you can see on your screens here. XG per 90 at 0.5, which is really good underlying numbers. And it's also worth noting, Enquiries has actually played quite a lot of minutes this season, because Gabriel Jesus had a previous injury earlier on in the year. So Enquiries played about 650 minutes. So this isn't just a small sample size, it is worth noting. Looking at the shots, 3.14 per 90, exactly what we would come to expect with Enquiries. And as I always say in my videos, any forward that has basically a 0 expected assist, and you can see that there, 0.05 expected assist for Enquiries, that just means that everything funnels through him in this attack for Arsenal. And that is exactly what we want. When we look at people like Callum Wilson, he is all about XG, nothing in terms of chance creation. Does that mean that maybe Enquiries is bad for the likes of Martinelli and Saka? Potentially, but I don't think that's enough of a reason for us to move away from our assets like Saka or Martinelli. We just need to consider whether Enquiries is an investment for our teams. For me, don't think you need to buy him this game week. Away against Newcastle doesn't really feel like a good entry point, and I'd much rather you guys consider rolling your free transfer, because if we get to game week 12 and he is still the #1 forward in this Arsenal team at home against Burnley, followed by Brentford, Wolves and Luton, if we're going to get Enquiries over that period, I imagine you're going to have to restructure your team to a 3-4-3 because you ain't selling Haaland and it'll be very difficult to sell Watkins. So for that very reason, I think rolling your transfer is actually a good move because then what you can do is use 2 free transfers to maybe change the structure of your team from a 3-5-2 currently to a 3-4-3. And that is the route that I recommend a lot of managers doing rather than invest in him for this really tricky away fixture against Newcastle. But again, let me know in the comments if you have already bought Nketiah going into the weekend. Now, coming on to some of the other information from the press conferences today. Another big team that we were all monitoring was, of course, Newcastle. And the update was Matt Targett doesn't look good. No, I'm kidding. Nobody cares about Matt Targett, unfortunately. Shout out to Matt Targett. The big news really from this situation is that Eddie Howe doesn't expect any returnees going into the Arsenal game. So that suggests that both Alexander Isak and Botman remain sidelined. So again, we don't have any clarification right now on the duration that Botman is going to be out. Some rumours suggest that he needs a small surgery, which then again is going to rule him out for a lot longer. And that opens the door for potentially a cheap option in Lascelles at 4 million. Now, I don't mind the option of Lascelles, but again, with the fixtures that Newcastle have, which are very tricky, I think it's a bit of a luxury move. And if Botman was to return in maybe 4 or 5 game weeks, I don't think actually making one of your moves to bring in Lascelles is actually a viable move. I think you're going to need these cheap defenders later down the line when the blank game week 18 arises and other game weeks. And maybe going for Lascelles is actually going to shoot you in the foot later down the line. So I don't think Lascelles is a desperate transfer, even though it does look like Botman is ruled out for a little bit longer. And I would sell him if I own him right now. And Alexander Isak ruled out. Don't think many own Isak right now, but it makes Callum Wilson a very viable option. Moving into Brighton, again, not too much to talk about right now. We know Solly March, Danny Welbeck and Julio Enciso are long-term absentees. Tariq Lamptey is available to face Everton. This is probably the biggest information from the Brighton press conference, alongside the Estupiñán news that despite his returning to training, he isn't available for game week 11. With the fixture schedule that we have coming up later down the line in the Christmas time and Brighton's Europa League involvement, I wouldn't be surprised if we were to see Lamptey and Estupiñán share some minutes longer term. I fully expect Estupiñán to be number one and play the majority of the minutes, but with Lamptey now available to face Everton, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Lamptey playing game week 11, maybe Estupiñán integrated back into 12, and then we maybe see some shared minutes over the longer term just to navigate those midweek fixtures and those Europa League fixtures as well. So Brighton right now, a very difficult beast to kind of invest in. I think Matoma is really the only route I'd go for right now because I think his minutes are pretty locked in going into the short-term fixtures at least. But let me know again if you have invested in those Brighton assets. Moving into Aston Villa, nothing really to shout home about right now. So the only major news, and the only reason why I've put this on your screens right now, is because Alex Moreno could make a comeback for game week 11. I know a few managers out there that have maybe invested in a Luca Digne. Good differential, but maybe his time's coming up in the team because one of the few players that Emery has actually brought into this Aston Villa team is, of course, Alex Moreno, and I do think he really does favour him. So I think the time for Digne could be coming to an end in this Aston Villa team. So if you own him, I would be maybe exploring an avenue to sell him later down the line. But the big worry for me right now, being a Matty Cash owner, is does this impact Matty Cash later down the line? We saw last season a real emphasis down that left flank of Alex Moreno being the one who was almost getting into the final third and linking up with the front three or front two, however you perceive it. And it meant that he was playing a much more traditional centre-back at right-back. We saw the likes of Ezri Konsa play at right-back at times. So I'm a little bit worried that we might see a regression to what we saw from Unai Emery last season. And maybe Matty Cash comes out of the team from time to time. So I don't think we need to panic right now. Until we actually see that sort of thing happen, then we can make our moves. But Matty Cash for the next few weeks looks absolutely fine. But just monitor that situation if maybe we do get the occasional Konsa at right-back. Last few teams that we need to touch on in regards to the injury updates. Wolves, Gary O'Neill has confirmed that Pedro Neto will be sidelined for a few weeks. Doesn't look like it is going to be months and months and months, but he won't be back before the international break. So if you own him, you definitely sell him. I've done a previous video discussing the best Neto replacements at a cheaper price. I do think Douglas Luiz does offer an opportunity, but as a Chelsea fan, watching them week in, week out, watching Cole Palmer, I don't think Cole Palmer's game time is at risk right now. He's one of the best Chelsea players right now. He's linking up really, really well. And the way that we try and actually get Reece James down the flank, we don't want a natural winger on that right-hand side. We really benefit from a player that actually drops into those half-space pockets and picks up the ball, enabling Reece James to attack those wide areas and get into a space that we saw against Blackburn. So I think Cole Palmer and Reece James really complement one another on that right flank. And I expect Cole Palmer to remain in that Chelsea team and be on penalties. The only big worry is the fixtures are dirty. And I get it if you don't want to downgrade from Neto to Cole Palmer. And if that is the case, maybe an investment in Wolves' Hwang could be a good investment down that side. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comments. But if you are a Neto owner, you are definitely selling him. I wouldn't be looking to keep him anytime soon. And last up, the last press conference, which is worth noting from today, is the news that both Alvarez and Paqueta are ruled out with suspension. Now, the reason why this is influential for FPL is because I think this is really going to impact Jarrod Bowen. Really tricky fixture away against Brentford, and they basically have the heart of their midfield ripped out from Alvarez and Lewis Paqueta. Now, again, it not going to impact Bowen's game time or anything, but West Ham as a team, I'm a little bit worried right now as a guy who wildcarded in game week 10, who was sold in Wemo. I feel like Bowen is on course for another blank this game week. I know it's very negative. I know it's very assumptive, but looking at the situation right now with it, I'm a little bit worried right now that West Ham could get done over by Brentford quite comfortably in this week, also playing midweek in that Carabao Cup fixture. So Bowen owners, just monitor this situation. Obviously, they're both going to be back for game week 12 and we'll be all happy and rosy when we come to that week. But I'm not expecting much from Bowen in this week, but maybe I'm just being a little bit of a negative owner right now. Now, the only other team that I haven't mentioned in this press conference roundup was Postecoglou's, trying to get that correct there, update on your doggy. It sounds like he is 50-50 going into game week 11, which isn't ideal for any FPL manager that currently owns him. My advice would be this. If you're in a situation where you see Spurs as your doggy being a long-term option for your teams, I probably would just hold him if you have the bench available to simply maybe bench him or start him and then have a good first sub. If you're in a situation where your squad's looking really stretched and your doggy is one of those third defenders that you really rely on playing, I would sell him. Maybe go to a Mark Guy of Crystal Palace, even upgrade to a Pedro Porro if you want to stick in that Spurs defence. But for me, I probably would view your doggy as a sell unless you are in a luxury position where you have some decent defenders that can cover him for this game week. And if that is the situation, I'd probably just start your doggy because I think he's either fit and he starts or he gets 0 minutes. That's probably the situation right now regarding him. So again, guys, please do let me know in the chat and in the comments section what your plans are for this game week. What I'm going to do now is reveal my game week 11 team, and then we will come into any of the questions that are being asked in the live stream. So let's get straight into my game week 11 team reveal. Now, for those that follow the video, follow the channel, and once again, if you haven't already, please do consider dropping a like and smashing that subscribe button as always. I did wildcard in game week 10, and I spoke about in years gone by, whenever I have wildcarded, the plan is always to roll the free transfer. When you're building a wildcard team, you're not just looking for one game week in isolation, you're looking for the longer term. So naturally, unless some injuries arise, unless some rotation out of the blue that happens, your team should be good for at least the next few game weeks. And that is currently the situation with my team. So yes, Gabriel isn't a good situation. We could see him hopefully back in the team against Newcastle, and then he isn't an issue for the team longer term. But I wasn't expecting that Gabriel rotation. And it's also worth noting that with the situation with Liverpool in the Carabao Cup, Shimikas and Mo Salah playing at 90 minutes, doesn't seem too convincing going into this weekend away against Luton, a fixture that Klopp could definitely rest some of his players. But again, if you are a Liverpool owner right now in Shimikas and Salah, you simply start them and you hope for the best. But it may put you off putting the captaincy on Mo Salah if you do think his game time could be a little bit at risk. I personally think he is going to start. I expect him to start, but I am a little bit put off from the captaincy, it is worth noting, mainly because I think Erling Haaland is a better captaincy option. So just going to quickly read through the team. Areola in goal. Again, I don't fancy West Ham this weekend. I think they are going to get comfortably beat by Brentford with the absentees that West Ham have. Defence, Shimikas, Matty Cash and Mark Guy, absolutely fine with that. Yes, I could see a situation where I squeeze Charlie Taylor into this team, but I really don't back that Burnley defence at all, and I much do favour the Crystal Palace defence over that, so I am going for Mark Guy, who's fantastic on the bonus points if they were to keep a clean sheet. Moving into the midfield, Palmer away against Spurs is not ideal, but as I mentioned, he's been very good in a Chelsea shirt. Fully expect him to get significant game time in that fixture, and he has been the heartbeat of the team from a creativity perspective. So on penalties, guaranteed game time, I don't mind it, even though I do expect a low-scoring game in that situation. Son at home against Chelsea, again, Son is the player that I want to hold long-term, and number 9, he has delivered in the big games so far this season against both Arsenal and Liverpool. Chelsea at home seems like a good fixture for him to continue that trend. We've already discussed Mo Salah away against Luton, and we have Saka away against Newcastle. Not the best fixture at all, but Saka is more of a long-term hold, and Bowen away against Brentford. I do have a slight eye on potentially downgrading Bowen to Mbeumo around game week 14 if that situation looks still ideal, because Brentford's fixtures from game week 14 are fantastic. So that is a consideration, but not right now with Bowen's situation. I would much rather give myself 2 free transfers for game week 12. The front 2, Watkins and Haaland, are going nowhere. Yes, the temptation is there for Nketiah, but I've discussed why I don't want to go for him with that away fixture against Newcastle. And I am Darwin Núñez curious, it is worth noticing, but I can't really vouch downgrading Watkins to Darwin Núñez into this game week. I think he could do absolutely unbelievable, but I just can't justify using one of those free transfers to do it. So this is my current plan. Going to roll out this 11. I'm going to roll my free transfer going into game week 12. And that will give me a few options. I can either then downgrade a player to then change the structure of the team to a 3-4-3, which looks really good. Or I simply roll with a free transfer and just allow FPL to do what it does best and cause carnage. And that is probably what will happen. So while the team looks great for game week 12 as well, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a situation where a rotation happens or an injury, which requires both free transfers for me to use. So really happy with how the team's looking. Really, really happy with maybe the trajectory that this team could go over the next few weeks. So thank you so much for tuning into the first part of this video. If you are watching it back, now I'm going to deep dive into some of the questions asked by the live stream chat. So I am going to go into that section. And as always, if you do want to watch it back on that situation, make sure you do check out the live chat and you can see all of the questions that have been asked. So this is now for everybody that is currently tuning in to the live stream. Welcome to the video. Please do, as I mentioned, drop a like if you are enjoying it. I'm going to go straight to the first question and work my way down as always. So please do stay patient with this situation. Cheekster, hope you're doing well. My friend Jonathan, hope you're doing well. Madrid fan, hello mate, hope you're doing well in it. Doing very well, mate. Hope you are too. Just need a quick coffee a minute just to quench the thirst. Cheeks is asking a very good question. Would you start Trippier and Gabriel in defence for game week 11? I don't think necessarily starting both is a bad thing. I would expect a low scoring affair in that game. But it is worth noting, if I had to rank them right now, I definitely would start Trippier over Gabriel. But again, if your defence is in a little bit of a bad spot, starting both isn't the best situation. But look, if I said to you it was a 0-0 and a tight affair, I don't think anybody would be surprised by that scoreline at all. And that would be an amazing differential for your team. Thomas is saying best Neto replacement. So I did cover that off in my Game Week 11 preview video. So I do really recommend going to check that out. I've put the timestamps on there so you can go quickly to that section. But to kind of rattle it through, I think Cole Palmer is just the best in terms of guaranteed minutes, penalties. The only downside is the fixtures are a little bit ropey, it is worth noting. I like the sideways move to Hwang at Wolves, but with Pedro Neto's injury and him being basically the chance creator in that Wolves team, I don't really know how it's going to impact Hwang from a goal scoring perspective. So we need to monitor that situation. And of course, if you have the money available to upgrade to a Matoma or an Mbeumo, that is the obvious route to go for, but I know that it does require funds. So I know it seems a little bit boring, but I do like Cole Palmer at a little bit of a cheaper price. A Dingra at Brighton is catching the eye, but we know with the fixtures that Brighton have and the rotation that De Zerbi has, we could see more rotation in that Brighton team. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comments on that one. Isak, hi mate, got Salah captain, but do you think captaining Tsimikas is way too risky? And the answer is absolutely yes. I don't see the upside on captaining Tsimikas. We're not necessarily seeing the Liverpool team that we saw years ago where Trent and Robertson were getting to the byline and cutting in and making all those amazing crosses for the team. We're just not seeing that right now. And again, we could see a situation where maybe Tsimikas sits out this game and Joe Gomez plays at left back. Salah has so much more upside. Playing obviously in an attacking third, on penalties, we would deem guaranteed game time. Chimikas is a very, very big risk on that one. Ashton, hope you're doing well. Ward-Prowse for Gordon, good transfer. Ward-Prowse for Gordon is not a bad transfer, but I don't think it's a transfer that needs to be made this game week. Gordon against one of the best defences in the league in Arsenal, going down the side of Saliba, Ben White. I don't really fancy that transfer myself. I think there are a lot more upside moves that you could make. It's worth noting Gordon is also a fantastic option for those that are maybe looking at a downgrade to Neto as well, or maybe an upgrade from a price perspective. But Ward-Prowse Gordon doesn't sit well for me this game week. I'd much rather pull the trigger on that the following game week. Shaquille saying Moreno super attacking left back could be a good FPL asset, 100%. But I'd want to see guaranteed game time for Moreno before even considering him in our FPL teams. Cheek said, would you start Areola ahead of Turner this week? To remind myself of who Nottingham Forest have, because I can't lie, I haven't really followed the Nottingham Forest fixtures, it is worth noting. They are at home against Aston Villa, a team that I always expect to score. So in that case, I probably would go for the Areola situation, because even though West Ham defensively are a little bit ropey, I would still fancy them over Nottingham Forest. That Aston Villa team are cooking right now. So yeah, I wouldn't really go down that route. And what I want to put in the chat as well, guys, is put a poll in here to ask you, who is your actual captain for game week 11? So who is your game week 11 captain? And I'll be really interested to know. So I'm going to put a few options there. I'm going to put Haaland. I'm going to put Salah. I'm going to put Son in there because I do think there'll be some differentials. And if I put other, if you can just let me know in the chat who you're going for, that'd be really, really handy to know for those managers that I consider in. Maybe some alternative captaincies to the main ones that we expect. Lungani saying Cash will not bomb forward most of the time if Alex Moreno is back, just like last season. Yes, that's the exact problem that I have right now. And I want to monitor it over the next few weeks to see how Moreno's game time is going to impact Matty Cash, because he's a bit of a cash cow right now, pardon the pun. I do think maybe if you need to free up some funds, cash down to a cheaper defender could be a popular move later down the line. But until we actually see him be impacted, I don't think we need to stress about it right now. It is worth noting. Cheeks, so which three defenders would you start out of? Anderson, Shimikas, Trippier, Gabriel and Cash. So I think you need to start Cash in that situation. And I think the options would be Shimikas and Trippier. I know Trippier's up against that Arsenal team, but I think if you pay nearly 7 million for a defender, you start him in any game. Because I think you'd really kick yourself if Newcastle put up an amazing performance at St. James's Park, which they definitely are capable of keeping a clean sheet. You know he is going to be on for maybe a 12-point haul if he does maybe pop up with an assist along the way. So I'd really just go for Shimikas, Trippier and Matty Cash. I'd go for those real attacking defenders and hope you get caught on maybe a couple of the upside picks on that one. Chisa, I like this new injury update segment during this live stream. Thank you, mate. Hopefully it does provide some value. Not as busy as what we usually have seen with the press conferences. We've usually had some real big updates, but again, it's really worth noting what players are out and how that does impact the team. Like I said, the West Ham situation with Alvarez and Paqueta being out, I think that is bad for Bowen in general. So it is worth noting how it does impact people in a whole. Gino, Taylor or Adingra to bench? I would bench Taylor all day. I think if you own Adingra, you have to start him because Brighton in any game usually put up around a 2 XG and you want a piece of that pie. And if you have Adingra, I think you just start him at all your fixtures. Yes, Charlie Taylor could pop up with a goal or an assist like we saw last time, but realistically, I'm not expecting too much from that Burnley defender. Start Gabriel or Maguire, realistically, it probably has to be Maguire away against Fulham, doesn't it? But I don't back him at all. I don't back him. Check out, I transferred in Wilson. Isak injured and Arsenal coming off a West Ham loss. Yes, don't mind Wilson at all. As I mentioned, when we're looking at expected goals per 90, he is up there alongside Darwin Núñez and Erling Haaland. Everything funnels through Wilson when he's in that Newcastle team. His one responsibility is to put the ball in the net. Whereas Alexander Isak is obviously a goal scorer, but he also has other strings to his bow. He's fantastic in the pocket, linking up the play. He's a brilliant dribbler as well. So I think when Wilson is that Newcastle team, we all need to have eyes on him because Newcastle are now a team that can beat anybody in the league. They can score against any team, and they're one of the highest XGs as a team this season. So yes, Wilson is a brilliant option. Although if he is going to come up against a defence that nullify him, it does feel like it could be Arsenal this game week. It is worth noting. Benji saying Anderson or Mark Guy. I would go for the cheaper option, the Crystal Palace defenders. Both are quite poor for goal scoring over the course of a season historically. The reason why Anderson is right up there is because I believe he scored 2 goals or at least 1 goal, 1 assist. So the points difference between him and Guy is quite large right now. But I would always pay the cheaper price for the Crystal Palace defenders because over the course of the season, both of those, or neither of those, are goal scorers that are going to get 10 goals from centre-back. I think Anderson is just in a bit of a purple patch right now. Just coming up, Hauke from Botman injury extensions today. Okay, had to get rid finally. Anderson or Guy, I've covered that one off. What are your plans ahead of the AFCON and Asian Cup? Why I say yes. So it's a really good question right now. So that is going to impact quite a lot of players in people's FPL teams. I don't think we need to worry about it right now. I think we can address that situation when we get there. But for example, if you're sat there with a Mo Salah, if you're sat there with a Son, like my teams right now, then you're in a little bit of a problem because obviously both of those are going to be expected to play in those respective cups. Also players that include that, maybe a Matoma and a Dingra at Brighton. All of these players are going to be obviously out at their teams during that period. But right now, I think we just own them and we deal with it when we get closer to that period because a lot can happen between now and AFCON and of course the Asian Cup. So it's a really good question, but I think maybe around game week 15, 16, we can start looking ahead to how we're going to plan to navigate those game weeks because we need to understand how many game weeks actually that does impact. And I don't have that information right now, unfortunately. Just want to make sure I covered off that question there. Jonathan, Gabriel, Taylor or Lascelles, is that to start? If that is a situation right now, I'd probably be looking to start probably Taylor, to be honest with you, or Lascelles, because I think he definitely will start. Can you rank Bowen, Matoma, Mbeumo and Diaby? Okay, Andreas, so it's a really good question here. I'm going to view it a bit more as a long-term perspective right now. So obviously of the options that you've mentioned, Mbeumo is the only one who's a penalty taker in his respective team. At West Ham, it's Paqueta. At Brighton, we don't really know. And at Aston Villa, it is Douglas Luiz. So I think Mbeumo naturally jumps to the top of the list because he's on penalties. And while the game weeks, I believe 12 and 13 are really difficult for Brentford, after that, the fixtures are amazing. And we are anticipating a double for Brentford in game week 20. Obviously, they will blank in game week 18. So right now, I probably would just go to Mbeumo. I think he's just a long-term better pick. Then I think I would probably have Matoma second. I would have Bowen third and Diaby fourth. That's probably the way that I would rank him right now. I think Diaby is an amazing option, but all the other options are brilliant as well. Sam, thoughts on Brennan Johnson? Haven't seen guaranteed game time to justify him as a pick. I think there will be rotation with Richarlison on that left flank. I know Brennan Johnson's been out with an injury, but I don't really know how he's going to integrate back into that team. So personally, I think he's an avoid unless we saw another injury to that Spurs attack. Then we could see guaranteed game time for him. Fraser saying, what rank do you realistically think you'll be able to finish this season? So it's a really good question. Didn't actually say on the stream what my rank is right now. So I'm currently about 780,000th in the world. Now, what I want to do is quickly show you. I won't be able to show you, but I'll tell you exactly where the difference between me and another team is rank-wise. So a site that I really do recommend, and I will put it in the chat here, is going to be, once I actually find where I'm at. Here we go. I'm going to pop this link in the chat for you guys. And this is a really, really good website because what you can do is input your team ID into live FPL. And then if you scroll down to the bottom once you have done that, you will get a situation where it's called live totals needed for ranks. This is going to tell you where your current rank is right now and what the difference between their rank and your rank is. And it gives you a bit of an idea on how far you actually need to climb in order to get to this situation. So take my example. I'm currently 780,000th in the world. In order to get 500k, they're 10 points ahead of me. In order to get to 100k, they're 38 points clear of me. And if I want to get into the top 10k, they're 67 points clear of me. So there's quite a big difference right now. It is worth noting regarding me and the top 10k. So sitting here right now telling you I want to get into the top 10k seems a very difficult task. But having played the game for a long time, being an engaged manager, and I appreciate there are a lot more engaged managers every single season that we progress, I still always back myself to get into the top 10k. The way that I play FPL is basically I don't get stressed about the actual outcomes because I can't control the players on the pitch. And that is something that I advocate all the time for FPL managers. Make sound decisions based on good logic, based on eye test, based on data. But once you click the buttons, once the game is passed and the game week's passed, if someone gets a red card, how can you blame yourself for that situation? You simply can't. So I am always optimistic. I always think I can get in the top 10k, but I know that there are a lot of things that can happen in FPL that we cannot control, and that is the big thing right now. But let me know in the chat, guys, what is your current rank and where do you want to finish at the end of the season? I'll be really interested to know how optimistic you guys are. And for those that have voted on the poll, please do if you haven't already. I've asked you who your game week 11 captain is. 82% are saying Haaland, which is massive. 9% on Salah, 2% on Son, 7% have said other. And I see someone has put, I believe Lungani said Darwin, which to be fair, I rate it. I absolutely rate somebody going for a Darwin Núñez punt because end of the day, I feel like we're getting into a situation right now where Darwin Núñez is starting to tick over as a viable FPL option. And if we were to get an injury to Watkins, I think we'd all be jumping on Darwin Núñez as our option going forward. Madrid fan saying Gordon replacement in the future, mate. Realistically, I'll be trying to free up some funds to upgrade Gordon into those 6.5s like an Mbeumo or a Matoma. I think that's going to be the next direction to go for your team. Do we think Shimicast rises in price tonight? So again, guys, for those that don't know, the best site around to do your price checks is going to be Fantasy Football Fix. I always advocate that. You can check it out. Just put it in the chat. I'm just going to give you a quick update on what they are saying here. So looking at the potential FPL price changes tonight, the only ones that look like they will rise in price is nobody. Nobody's going to rise in price. It is only people falling in price. And those include Mount, Varane, Tete. Nobody has any investment. Shimicast is currently expected to rise in price tomorrow. So I think you're going to be absolutely fine. I don't expect his price to rise between now and the game week 11 deadline. It is worth noting. Who to start between Gvardiol and Cash? Really tough one here because I think Cash will start. I don't know if Gvardiol will. At home against Bournemouth, I would back Gvardiol. I think he either starts or we get 0 minutes. And then I would make sure Cash is first on your subs bench. Oh, no, actually, if you own Cash, you've got to start Cash. I would start Cash. I think Gvardiol definitely has the potential for a clean sheet higher than that of Cash. But we know Cash is one of those few defenders that has the double points potential. We haven't seen a lot of it so far this season, but he's so attacking. And I rate the Aston Villa defence. You've got to go Matty Cash. I don't know why I said Gvardiol. I think you'll probably be in a situation where I can see it now. Cash probably comes off after 75, concedes. Gvardiol gets a 6-pointer. And you'll see 2 points from Cash, 6 from Gvardiol, and you kick yourself. But I think the upside of Matty Cash is worth taking right now. Is Eze injured or available? I do apologise. I didn't put an update regarding Crystal Palace. Big news regarding them, and that is going to be that both Elise and Eze are expected to return before the international break, which is massive because Crystal Palace have basically been operating without 2 of their best players, their most influential creative players. So that's going to really make them viable options. And Palace's fixtures are actually really good over the medium term, so maybe the likes of an Eze could emerge as a fantasy option once again. Just to remind you, the prices of both Eze and Elise. Currently, Eze is priced at 6.1 million. It could be an amazing enabler for FPL managers. And the fixtures coming up for Crystal Palace, we're going to rule him out for game week 11 because we know he isn't available. But game week 12 onwards includes Everton at home, Luton away, West Ham away, Bournemouth at home. What an amazing run of fixtures if Eze does incorporate back into that team. And we know he's on penalties as well, which is a big string to his bow. Elise as well, another option. 5.8 million, but with the price differences being so close, I would always go for Eze of the 2 options. Elise being much more of a chance creator in that Crystal Palace team, and we've also not seen him play for a long time, so I think he will be taking a lot longer to integrate back into the Palace team than that of Eze. What to do with Luis Diaz? You're in a real tricky spot right now. Probably would just start him and hope for the best, but again, I get it. Very, very tough personal situations that he's going through right now. It isn't injury or anything like that. So if you are worried about it, maybe a sideways move to a Diogo Jota could be a pick, or going down to somebody like a Mbeumo in preparation for a long-term hold. Penalties for Wolves. I don't actually know. Maybe Cunha, but I don't think we actually have clarification on that one right now. Maybe Huang as well, it is worth noting. Archer to Darwin, 3 million in the bank, got everyone important apart from Haaland. Look, 2K, 24K Will, is that the name? If you can get Darwin this game week, I'll do it. I absolutely would do it. The only other thing I would say is you could bring in Enquiries in game week 12 if you prefer to go down that route, but I'd be very tempted to do Darwin. Oh Christ, I'm not the mic. What I would recommend is this. Maybe look at what your team looks like with Darwin in over the next few game weeks, and then look how your team might look if you hold off for 1 week and bring in Enquiries. The reason why I say that is about 2 million difference between Darwin and Enquiries. So if you go for Darwin, you are obviously using a lot more funds in that forward spot. Does the 2 million benefit the rest of your squad? Just let me know on that one. Saliba Pocket Wilson. Yeah, I could see that happening. Braithwaite or Lascelles for fourth defender, long-term in cash. Long-term, Braithwaite, absolutely, because we don't really know the extent of the Botman injury right now. Braithwaite is a breakthrough player in that Everton team. He is going to start the majority of games for them, 100%. And cash, I have Trippier, Shimmercast, Taylor, sell later. Charlotte, I don't really get the question there. But I'll go for Braithwaite, 100% of those. Holden Bruno this weekend, hopefully does pay off. I sold them in that wildcard and I was very, very happy about it. Bench order, Archer, Taylor or Burn. I probably would go for Taylor, Burn, then Archer of that. Fraser is ranked 180k. That's awesome to see, mate. And also up the Chelsea. Glad you're a Chelsea lad. Yes, of course. Very stop-start season right now. Look great against Arsenal. Bad against Brentford, but I'm still very hopeful. I think once we actually get into a situation where the team is looking stable, then I'm very excited to see how this Chelsea team can do. But Reece James needs to stay fit. It is very important, even though Malagusto has been fantastic so far this season. Reece James is just another level and adds that attacking potential that Chelsea have maybe been missing in certain wide areas right now. Cody's saying 128k right now. Be happy to finish top 100k. Yeah, 100%. Bruno drop. Bruno not close to a drop anytime soon. I will check for you right now. Bruno Fernandes. No, he's Fernandes. Tomorrow. Won't happen tonight, it doesn't look like. Should I start Burn or Gabriel? Only other choice is Taylor. Realistically, I probably would back the Newcastle defence and go for Burn. Gabriel, we don't even know if he'll necessarily start, even though I'll be surprised if he doesn't. Thoughts on... So you're on about Szoboszlai of Liverpool. I believe it's that or Szoboszlai. Good. Play 90 minutes every week. His chance creation is fantastic. He's on a lot of set pieces. I just can't really justify paying for him when we got Mbeumo, Matoma, Diaby at cheaper prices with equally good fixtures. I'd much rather you just go for Salah, maybe Shimmercast, and then I think you just pay that money and go for Darwin Núñez, who's a much better option. I always talk about this in videos, and it might sound a bit crazy, but I want to do a slide on this later where when we have FPL teams, we almost have what I call the steak and the side salad. So the steak is basically the main dish. This is the main guy that you need to own. And the side salad is, you don't have to own this person, but it's going to really benefit your team if you do go for them. So let me give you an example. Somebody like a Arsenal. Saka is the steak. He's the main dish. He's the one that everybody wants. But the side salad is going to be a Martinelli, for example. You don't have to have him, but it's nice to have him on the side if you can accommodate him in the team. Let's take somebody else, for example. Liverpool. Salah is the epitome of a steak. You're going to buy other players, but you always want the steak in Mo Salah. And then if you can get the side salad, like a Luis Diaz or maybe a Darwin Núñez, then that's a great situation to be in. Another example of that is going to be, let me think of someone else. Brighton, for example. Matoma is the steak, the main dish. The side salad is going to be somebody like an Adingra or a Ferguson. Hopefully you caught the drift there, even in a Stupinan. So when you're trying to buy players from big teams, you always get the main guy. You always get the main guy. And then if you can have that little bit on the side where you get the double up, like Spurs, Son is the main dish. If you can get Maddison on the side, it's a good situation to be in, but you always go for the main dish. Start Maddison or Trippier? Who are you starting ahead of these boys? I would say to you, you need to try and start both. Hi, I love the content as usual. Thoughts on Trippier to play or bench him and put Porro? So look, I think with Trippier, when you pay this much money, and it was the same applied to Alexander-Arnold last season, If you pay that much, you have to play him in every single fixture regardless. I know it looks like a tough fixture, but Trippier is one of those assets that even if they concede, he could get an assist from a corner, he'd get an assist from open play, and automatically he is in the bonus points. I just think there are certain players, you pay that much cash, they are automatic picks in any game week. Now, I get it. Pedro Porro could definitely step up and outscore Trippier, but you're really going to kick yourself if you pay that much money and you don't actually get the money, the returns from him. Absolutely no worry at all. Murray, Watkins, or Nunez? Look, the answer is Watkins because he's on penalties. The fixtures are good for Aston Villa. The ownership is quite big. But if I was in a situation where I was not looking at ownership, I didn't know what was going on in the FPL world, and I wasn't a fearful manager, Darwin Nunez. He's a risky pick, but the upside is absolutely massive. The reason why it's Watkins is because he just makes complete sense. He's going to play 90 minutes every week, no stress, and it's just a no-brainer. And did I just mention that Watkins is on penalties? Because if I did, he isn't. Douglas Luiz is. I do apologise if I mentioned that Watkins is on penalties. Matoma, by far the best Brighton asset. Ollie, sorry, no, Watkins not on pens. I meant, I'm sorry about that. It's Douglas Luiz on penalties. I do apologise, but still, the point still remains that Watkins guaranteed minutes and he's the focal point in that Aston Villa team. Very, very difficult to move away from Watkins. But if you weren't a fearful manager and you were maybe playing for a bit more upside, Darwin Nunez is the man. Harry Maguire will actually end up in my team somehow. Yes, he's a good enabler at 4.2, but I'm not expecting many clean sheets at all from Man United. Is Estupiñán fit? No, he is ruled out for game week 11. This is the quote that was taken from Brighton. So we have got here, Tariq Lamptey is available to face Everton. Game week 11 comes too soon for Pervis Estupiñán despite his recent return to training, which suggests to me that game week 12 is going to be the time that we actually get Estupiñán as an option. Should I transfer Diaby to Mbeumo in week 14? Yes, again, bit of a further afield transfer that we need to worry about, but it looks like a really good penciled in transfer for managers later down the line. So yes, Mbeumo game week 14 is going to be a very popular move. And if you had to transfer in a defender 5 million or below for game week 12, except Tsimikas and Anderson, who would it be? So if I was targeting game week 12 in isolation, I don't see a huge amount of clean sheets it is worth noting. You already have the Crystal Palace investment and you already have the Liverpool investment, which is great. So outside of this, I think what clean sheets do I see? Brighton, you could bring in maybe a Dunk into your team or somebody like a Veltman, but it doesn't feel good long term. I think Aston Villa is still a good investment if you want to go for someone like a Pau Torres as a pick. Otherwise, if you want to come down to a cheap option, it's not going to be good for the short term, but longer term, a Braithwaite at Everton, maybe a Charlie Taylor at Burnley if you want to go for the long-term picks. But if you're looking to play one for this weekend and maybe pick up a clean sheet, I would look at the Brighton defenders or maybe look at investing in a Pau Torres of Aston Villa. Ollie, my defence is ruined now. I have Burn and Gabriel I have to play. Look, it isn't the worst case in the world. We could see a situation 100% where we get a 0-0, Arsenal and Newcastle cancel one another out. That is definitely a possibility that could happen, and what an amazing differential that could be for your team. Gareth saying, should I bench Burn or Gabriel? Look, this is a very difficult one because I really don't know what way this game is going to go, but at home, at St. James's Park, I'm always going to back the Newcastle defence, so I would go for Burn and I would bench Gabriel. But to be honest with you, this is one of those sort of things where I'm really not confident about it because I really don't know what way that game is going to go. So I do apologise if you bench Gabriel and he is the one that keeps the clean sheet. If I had to look at bookies odds, I'll be very surprised. I think they're probably very, very similar between what their clean sheet odds are. So I'm going to sit here and say I'm not confident on the decision, but I would say Burn, but I'm not very confident on that one. And Yunath is saying, will Hwang be affected by Neto's absence? And absolutely that will be the case. Neto has been a real influence from a creativity perspective in that Wolves team. So even though it doesn't look like it is going to directly impact Hwang, it will, 100%. I think Hwang's output may regress, but also he's going to be even more of a talisman in that team. The emphasis is going to be on him putting the ball in the net. So I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I'm just making sure I have not missed any big news, guys. We will be wrapping up the live stream in a minute. So if you haven't put your questions in the chat, please do, as I'll be answering them over the next few minutes, and then we will wrap it up there. As always, if you haven't already, please do consider dropping a like on the stream, and as always, subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. I will be doing a deadline live tomorrow, going through any of your last minute questions, and that'll be from 9 a.m. up until 10 a.m. and then I'll be doing a 10 till 11 TikTok live. So again, I will be on before some of the big time creators, so you can maybe get your questions answered, as mine are a little bit more slower pace than some of the manic ones that you see on YouTube. So hopefully I can go into in-depth on any deadline questions that you do have. So we're going to put a timer on. I'm going to go for another 3 minutes, and then we're going to wrap up the live stream. So if you have any questions, please do fire away now. Cody's Revenge saying, have you mentioned triple captain Haaland this weekend? If not, what's your thoughts? Yes, it is a fantastic fixture at home against Bournemouth, and I couldn't knock anybody going for Haaland triple captain this week. The reason why I'm not doing it right now is because the anticipation is that in game week 20, we're going to get a double game week for Man City at home against Sheffield United and at home against Brentford. Now, the big caveat here is you always want to put a triple captain in a double game week, but what's to say Haaland only plays one of those games in a busy fixture schedule? So I always try and play it on a double game week because the upside is there. But I would argue also that Haaland, because of the fixtures being quite favourable, could be rested in one of those fixtures. Therefore, you're only getting a single game week similar to this week. So crack on if you want to do it. I'm probably going to pull the trigger on a double game week for Man City and Erling Haaland. Ollie, should I stick with Gabriel Byrne and cash or get someone in for a Stupinan? I have a free transfer. Ollie, I would look at your team right now, say to yourself, does my team look better with 2 free transfers in game week 12? If it's the case, you've held a Stupinan long enough. I think it could be a good differential for you from game week 12 onwards. So I'd probably go for that. And then if De Zerbi comes out and says a Stupinan has a knockback, he's not available, then you look to sell him. I think, yes, your defence looks terrible this week, I would argue, but who are you bringing in this week to really benefit from? I've discussed, I'm not really big on many defences this weekend, it is worth noting. Is Alvarez a long-term hold? He always is. Darwin Núñez, Watkins are also great viable options. City's fixtures are a little bit mixed. I think you could be tempted to go to a Darwin Núñez if you haven't already. So Alvarez is perfectly fine to hold. Just monitor his minutes if we do see some rotation from Pep, but we haven't seen it yet. Should I play Lamptey or Byrne? I personally would play... I'd play Lamptey. I think Lamptey's going to start this weekend as he is available for the fixture. But it is worth noting the fixture isn't amazing away against Everton, but I probably would favour Lamptey in that situation. Bench Visser or Trippier? Visser. I said this before, if you're paying that much money for someone like a Trippier, I think you have to start him in any game week that you have. I know that Visser probably looks on paper the better one, but you can't be benching Trippier if you're paying that much money. BZN Media saying, I need a defender desperately. Should I take the 4-point deduction for it? It's going to be all about who you're selling. As I said, I'm not huge on the defence this week. Who would you be selling is the big question. Enquetia or Wilson, the better pick? Once again, both rotation risks in the long term. Once Alexander Isak is back, we will see minutes shared alongside Wilson, and the same applies for Enquetia once Gabriel Jesus returns. Realistically, at 5.5 million, I would be very tempted to bring in Enquetia, but I wouldn't advise buying either of those this game week because the fixture is against one another, against 2 very good defences. My recommendation would maybe to reassess in game week 12, and with the home fixture of Burnley at home for Arsenal, I think Enquetia would be the natural pick for you at 5.5 million. Okay, I think that's going to wrap up the live stream, guys. For those that are just jumping in, here is my game week 11 team reveal. I am almost locked into this unless we get any late news in the lead up to the game week 11 deadline. I'll be rolling my free transfer with my captaincy on Erling Haaland, and I'm pretty set with this team. I don't see any issues with it right now, and I'm pretty happy to give myself 2 free transfers for game week 12. So that just leaves to say thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. I really hope it's provided some value for you guys. And of course, if you haven't already, please do consider dropping a subscription. Please do subscribe to the channel. I will be going live on the lead up to the deadline tomorrow morning, so make sure you are checking that one out. Have a great evening, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's deadline live.